Good afternoon. I'm Shafqat Munir from the Bangladesh Center for Terrorism Research, which is a constituent unit of the Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon, and thanks to Nisa and the organizers of the Strategic Studies Summit for this opportunity. What I would like to do is to discuss about the topic of terrorism and violent extremism in South Asia. The South Asian region has faced a multitude of challenges ever since the countries in the region became independent. The challenges have been developmental, the challenges have been related to economic security, poverty, malnourishment, so on. But over a period of the last 20 years, the challenge from terrorism and violent extremism has been quite significant. And especially in the post-9/11 environment, all the 8 countries of South Asia have been afflicted with the problem of terrorism and violent extremism like never before. The most tranquil environs of the Maldives have been disturbed as a result of terrorist acts. Countries such as Afghanistan and Pakistan have faced an existential challenge to the future of their state because of terrorism and violent extremism. For countries like my own country, Bangladesh, the problem of terrorism and violent extremism has further compounded challenges of governance and development. So as a whole, the problem has taken a monumental proportion. It is very important for us to remember that quite often, operational success in counterterrorism in the South Asian context is seen as the only answer. But what is also important to note is that operational success, unless it is backed by strategic achievements in countering terrorism, does not serve the purpose. While terrorists and extremists are getting drawn to the ideas that espouse hate and violence because of ideological reasons, there is also a component to which we need to take notice of. Terrorists and extremists also get attracted to the idea of creating mass violence, of killing and maiming hundreds of people because of some of the other problems that exist within society. I have seen case studies personally that people who have lived in a life of deprivation and lack of opportunity have been attracted or have been exploited by radical organizations or have been given to see that the radical ideas that they were exposed to were in some ways the answer to their problems. While one could argue that pecuniary privations are not the only reason why people get attracted to join such organizations, in the South Asian context, it has been a major problem. In fashioning a counter-terrorism strategy for the whole region, the first problem that we encounter is the lack of a common threat perception. While all the states face a common challenge from terrorism and extremism, there hasn't been a platform or there hasn't been a forum where they could sit together and discuss a common South Asian counterterrorism strategy. What has also been a factor impeding South Asia's common counterterrorism efforts is a lack of proper counterterrorism architecture within the South Asian states. While individual states make an enormous amount of operational achievements, the lack of a proper counterterrorism architecture bedevils a lot of their efforts. Let us consider for a moment the groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed or Huji and the kind of threats they pose to the region. Groups from another ilk, such as the left-wing extremist groups, also have very robust networks. It is also important for us to remember that many of the South Asian militants and terrorists who are operating today had cut their teeth or had their baptism of fire during the war against the forces of the former Soviet Union in Afghanistan in the 80s. Lack of information sharing, mistrust between states, a lack of a cooperative mechanism does nothing but aids these organizations. The terrorist networks are cooperating. It is time for the counter-terrorists to get together. We can take the example of Southeast Asia, where a center has been established in Jakarta for joint training and information sharing. It is time for us in South Asia to take a note from that, or to take a leaf from their page, to take a leaf from their book, and start thinking about a platform for joint training and information sharing in the South Asian context. We also need to look at how our armed forces can be better prepared to deal with such threats. We can look at how our theological bodies, our theologians, can be brought to the counterterrorism debate in helping states fight terrorism. Let us not forget that ultimately it's an ideational, ideological debate. An ideological or ideational debate can only be countered by providing a better ideological response. Our educational institutions can collaborate. I think the key message that South Asian states need to derive is that collaboration will play a very important role in fashioning a comprehensive South Asian counterterrorism response mechanism. There is an urgent need to address these issues. There is an urgent need for South Asia to find a common threat perception vis-a-vis terrorism. Terrorism in South Asia is also clearly linked to other transnational threats, which are also causing tremendous problems for our states and societies. It is important for South Asians to remember that in order to effectively fight terrorism, a whole of government and a whole of society approach is absolutely critical. It is also important for South Asian states to remember the absence of a terrorist attack, or rather the absence of a successful terrorist attack, does not denote the absence of a terrorist threat. The threat is there today, the threat will be there tomorrow. South Asian countries need to come together to collectively work in minimizing the threat for a better tomorrow.